guess some of my speculations were probably not correct. I saw there was already some discourse going on, so please remember I scripted this while we did not know enough about things that happened yet, and thank you to all of our wonderful channel members.
Hold back in section. Let's begin our.
It's been a
social media alhamdulillah funjira forasale because they get sakala they dakala duno do nya fara not asia they don't know how to spend it so for guy encourage kale because tunatembea mompena to sala ma brado salibi fina salibi ala la hina salibi peace ale na prepare to way and motara fully kaisini and me by meta makibi but musa sako assalamu alaikum and my better the way my people the way I'm gonna intelligent people west school people say hi to you say hi to Bangali Musa Debate. How you doing, my brother? Kadia to raise son, how you doing? Brother Musa Sako, I'm so proud of you. You're a good man. May Allah reward you with your long life. And Balo to Mamadi Kamara, how you doing there, my brother? I hope you are okay to this evening. Sometimes it's good to interact with your follower. Sometimes it's good to come on social media and never teach you nothing politics. Well, I want to take this chance to make a views to our brothers and sisters in Islam. Most of the schools that we build, we opened two schools this year. Last year, we opened Islamic school.
Hi everyone. It's been a while. Apologies for my lack of commentary videos in 2 months. How did we let that happen? Yeah, so I started college, which is taking up quite a bit of time, as you can imagine. But trust me, I've been working in the background. Now that I've lured you in successfully with the clickbait title, oh, you love your top ones, don't you? What I wanted to discuss with you guys today is regarding all of our anticipation on the upcoming top 1 demons, Flamewall and Grief, and figuring out which one will be the next top 1. However, I'd like to state off the bat that I, in fact, do not know the answer. Yeah, sorry to disappoint you all so soon into the video. I'm just a good-for-nothing idiot. But what I do know is top 1s. I love myself a good upcoming extreme, and I thought it'd be pretty fun and interesting at looking at all the different angles trying to determine which one will rank higher than the other when all is said and done. The now not-so-recent news of 499% death on Flamewall was definitely unexpected, but it ended up bringing this very video's topic to light. Many community members were all making their claims on whether Flamewall or Grief is the harder level, since as of right now, yes, we really don't know. Since as of right now, yes, we really don't know. I aim to provide more help for predictions and reasoning depending on which level you believe is superior. You may see this as a bit of an irrelevant topic, but I'd actually disagree with you. Grief is extremely popular and has been seen by millions of people online, as well as being a spectacle to watch get verified live. Similarly, Flamewall also gained a lot of attention over time in the community, with the Flamewall 99% death on YouTube reaching #1 on the hyped leaderboard and even being tweeted by a big Twitter account. Not to even mention the showcase has 1 million views now. So, as we can see, both of these upcoming demons are going to make a huge impact on the community when each is verified. But also, I have a lot of fun making predictions. So hey, what are you gonna do? Before we begin, I'm really trying to reach 30K by the end of the year, so if you watch this video and end up enjoying it, a little sub goes a long way. And without further ado, let's talk about the first level. So chances are, a lot of you are saying, Grief is top 1. Let's slow down now. We already know Grief is for sure worthy of holding the title of the hardest level in the game if verified now. If you haven't seen Doggy spraying perfect counter of Grief, yeah, I'm pretty sure that speaks for itself. So we've already determined that Grief is without a doubt harder than Tidal Wave and Amethyst. Okay, video over. But wait, there's more. As a different approach, let's all pretend we're little toddlers who know nothing about Grief or Geometry Dash. To get the best understanding, let's go through and list all the characteristics that Grief possess that make it so difficult compared to our current hardest levels in the game. Grief does have a staggering 237 frame perfects on 60 Hz, but let's ignore frame perfects for now, since they don't always give an accurate representation of a level's raw difficulty. Grief is just shy of 3 minutes in length, and as most of us know, length matters. This could possibly indicate how hard the base gameplay is for the majority of Grief's runtime. Doggy has stated in the past,
I just hope it's at least as much harder than Tidal Wave as Tidal Wave is than Acheron. That's like the bare minimum I hope for.
what he's referring to here is that Tidal Wave is infamously much higher than Acheron, like by a lot. Looking at the list today, where the two were once neighbors, now lie 8 spots apart with more of a separation to come. So Doggy was aiming for Grief to have a similar jump in difficulty to that of Tidal Wave. Since Grief and Tidal Wave are about the same length, we can make the assumption that the base gameplay for Grief could be much harder than that of Tidal Wave's. I'm doing most of the comparisons to Tidal Wave since they are much closer in similarity than compared to Grief and Amethyst, by the way, since both are 3-minute wave carry levels. Oh, and speaking of Amethyst, we can make another assumption that the base gameplay of Grief is either on par with Amethyst or ever so slightly easier. I don't want to make the bold claim that Grief's base gameplay is harder, since WPOP and saying Grief's gameplay is on par or a bit easier would be much safer of a guess. Another part of what makes Grief so difficult is it being second half heavy. The infamous 65%, Griefer's part, the hardest section of the level, which has become very apparent based on Doggy's progress over time. Although the hardest part only spans about 23%, it is quite the jump in difficulty. Now that we have a standard overview, let's shift gears. Now, Flamewall, on the other hand, is on a very different tier than Grief is. Flamewall clocks in at just about under 7 minutes in length, if you can believe that. And this is what I mean when I said earlier that length matters. Though doing a brief overview of Flamewall is a little bit more interesting than Grief, since we don't know nearly as much about the level. Cuatrocientos is an extremely good player, but while Doggy's hardest completion is Acheron/Silent Clubstep, Cuatro's hardest is Belladonna, a low top 30. Funnily enough, Cuatro can literally shred through a low main list in just a few days and in about 10k attempts. So he clearly has a talent, but is definitely putting all of his skill and focus towards Flamewall respectively. While we're on the topic of determining difficulty, it's hard to say if Cuatro is really good enough to buff Flamewall to where he believes, oh yeah, it's top 1 now. No shade. I mean, top 30 is still pretty damn good, but very drastic of a shift compared to our current top 5. This is probably why he began labeling Flamewall as a possible top 1 to 3. But we also need to know that he's buffed the level a lot, with the goal in mind of getting that top 1 spot at the end. Going back to its runtime, Flamewall being over twice as long as Grief is for sure going to play a huge role in determining its place on the list. Players who have good nerf control could say it's low top 5, and players with bad nerf control could say it's undeniably top 1. Cuatro's performance on Flamewall lately has been genuinely jaw-dropping, and is low-key making us forget that he's playing the potentially hardest level in the game. Like, I don't know what kind of animal you have to be to not only get 99% for the second time, but to just say, and play from 0 again. How? So Cuatro clearly has the nerf control for Flamewall, which could most likely skewer its initial placement after it's verified. The reason I haven't touched much on the gameplay is that it seems to be pretty balanced throughout the whole thing surprisingly, but that's probably for the best. Imagine 6 minutes into the level and it hits you with the Thinking Space 2. Nothing super special, and it's probably on par with the same difficulty of raw gameplay as Tidal Wave's pre-drone. There's currently no video online of Flamewall's frame perfect counter, but I would imagine along with the rest of you that it's probably nothing special. Maybe somewhere in the range of 50 to 70 on 60 Hz, just because Flamewall isn't wave carried and most of the gaps in the level are probably somewhat forgiving. That's a big assumption though, but that wraps up Flamewall. Wave carried and most of the gaps in the level are probably somewhat forgiving. That's a big assumption though, but that wraps up Flamewall. And before we move on, guys, I'm now affiliated with Wooting. A lot of you probably already know, but Woody makes time while we still wait for both to be verified, is take a look at the hardest achievements list, a website that tracks and logs the hardest feats accomplished in this game across many categories. This includes 60 Hz achievements, consistency, and lots of level progresses. On the list, we have this pretty interesting lineup of levels. Flamewall 99%, Amethyst 100%, and Grief 80%. So this actually tells us a lot. Let's just pretend that the Flame Wall 99% is just 100, since that last spike he died to is basically going to do nothing when added to the total difficulty. So Flame Wall is harder than Amethyst according to this list, which I must add is not 100% accurate. So please keep that in mind while we continue to speculate. Amethyst, however, is said to be harder than Grief 80%, which is fair enough. Doggy did die in the middle of one of the hardest sections, so that last 20% of the level definitely accumulates much more to its total difficulty compared to Flame Wall and its last spike. So we can use this placement to assume that Grief is going to be harder than Amethyst. However, do we think that this last 20% of Grief will be the final push great enough to surpass Flame Wall? Because again, we're just pretending this says 100%. And don't forget about probably the biggest implication. Remember, Grief is being verified with CBF, while Flame Wall is not. There's also a possibility that Grief with CBF is easier than Flame Wall, but Grief without CBF could be miles harder. There's just a lot of questions. And see, some of these I really can't answer. In the past, Doggy did say he would do whatever it takes to make Grief the hardest level in the game when verified, but nowadays it's looking pretty grim. Not to say I don't believe in Doggy, I think he could 100% verify Grief if he takes the time to either grind a new hardest, like how Quattro played a lot of levels on the side during Flame Wall, or do nothing but grind 17 to 100 since it will connect the run from the pre-job to the end and give him a new longest run and even give a big confidence booster that will give him hope with Grief again and will even give him better nerve control. Hint, hint. But still believing he could continue to buff Grief to ensure he will be top 1 is pretty naive to think now, no offense. Doggy can only push himself so far. Quattro, on the other hand, is still not reliable enough for an opinion at the end of the day. For all we know, this could literally be top 6, since he hasn't played anything in the top 10 enough, let alone top 3, as he so claims is projected at. At the end of the day, only time will tell with Flame Wall. This level will definitely need more than one player opinion on where it should be placed at the top of the list, while Grief has more of an edge considering Doggy has given out copies to the top few players on StatsViewer. And I'm pretty sure they think it's top 1. Don't take my word for that, but Doggy never spoke out and said, "We may have miscalculated the difficulty, guys." Some of you have probably been waiting to hear what I think will be harder, and if I must choose an answer, I think I'm gonna have to go with Flame Wall here. As much as I want to convince myself that Grief is the harder between the two, that 7-minute runtime is just way too hard to get behind, man. Like, can you imagine playing for 7 minutes straight with just 2 small breaks that add up to just under 10 seconds? Without a doubt, Quattro was getting blurred tunnel vision that first time he got to 99%. That last 15% must feel surreal. So that's why I believe Flame Wall could be the harder level, but keep in mind, that's just what I believe. But I will say this, I hope both players get the payoff they deserve. Doggy desperately needs his grind to come to an end, and Quattro needs to be put in the spotlight for being such an underrated player. I think both levels are awesome, and I would personally not mind whichever one comes out on top. So hopefully this video provided more context on each level individually, so now you don't go around and spew nonsense on which is harder because you said so. Stay informed, people. My apologies if you think this video was a nothing burger. I just like to put my thoughts on paper, and apparently some of you find it entertaining, I guess. But that's neither here nor there. Thank you guys so much for being patient and watching until the end. I'll be getting out more content soon that I think